This conference will now be recorded.
So let me tell you what we're trying to do here as more people keep coming in. We scheduled this. I didn't realize that DabbleCon was going on when we scheduled this. So normally we'd probably have about 10 more people on, but it's 2 or 3 companies sent all their people to DataCon, which I didn't really factor in. But let me just start by saying, one thing I'm, I guess, passionate about, or whatever you want to say, or committed to, or devoted to, is I really think of all of you guys as professionals, right? And because of that, what I want to do with an STP, to the extent we can, is to figure out how together actually we can start to develop your professional skills in a way that makes you successful. And second of all, is I think you guys have a lot to learn from each other and the owners in this sense. So we're kind of kicking off something. I kind of waited after the roundup to figure out what that would start to look like. And I think we want to try to do 2 things together as a CAM group. One is just just talk through some scenarios that Rich has put together and talk about, how would you handle it, or what could we learn from how other people would handle it. And it's really just kind of trying to do a virtual version of what Rich did at the roundup with you guys, right? And then 2 is I just want you, after this, I'm going to set up a team site for you and all that stuff. And I really want you guys to start to get to know each other and be able to help each other out. And I think what's interesting is I think that's happened almost organically, where I know that Hank talks to the guys at New Wave a lot, and I know Russell's reached out to some people too. So I want you to be able to just get to know each other and know how you can help each other, and kind of collectively kind of tell me how we can best be of service to you guys, what we can do. And I talk to a lot of you guys kind of regularly, but I don't talk to all of you guys regularly. So I might be reaching out to see how we can make this even better for you. And then what we would want to do on some schedule is figure out training, right? So one obvious one is how to have the best kind of cybersecurity strategy discussions with your clients might be one. Another one might be, how do you talk about cloud migrations, right? So talk about kind of very important things that happen in the context of a client relationship, and just kind of build a best practice kind of portfolio of how we do those, how we can best do those things. So I might be reaching out to you guys for some training topics too. So the purpose of today is Rich is going to set up some scenarios, real life scenarios actually, is going on at his company, and talk through, when this occurs and when this happens, what's kind of our best ideas basically about how to deal with it or how to handle it. And if this works out, we think this is a good format, we may do this kind of on a every other month basis, right? So with that, what I'd ask for too is for those of you who can be on camera so people can see you and you can talk, and keep yourself muted till you want to talk. But I think with that, Rich, do you want to just kick it off for us?
Yeah, sure. So good afternoon, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Rich Kenney, and I'm one of the owners at TechSolutions. We're in Wilmington, Delaware. We've got 2 account managers right now. Well, me, I would be a third one, I guess. So Al Irizarry is on this call. He is one of them, and the other one is with a client right now, and I just got off of that call. So I'm just going from call to call to call today. At any rate, what we wanted to do, so I see a handful of familiar faces, Hank, Rich, Kyle, etc. Especially, I recognize you from actually a couple of different STP roundups. But for those of you who were there in May, I guess it was May. One of the things that I did is do the scenario thing, and we decided to do the scenario thing again. And it's just what's going on. Really, the scenarios came from what's going on in the world of TechSolutions and how would you handle it. And I'm nothing more than a moderator here. What my goal is, or what Michael and I's goal is for this, is for you guys to, feed off of each other and come up with a good just a discussion. The idea here also is that each company is different and your structure is different, and maybe your business processes are different. So there's not going to be any one right answer, I guess. It's the whole thing is just, I'm just going to ask a question and then have you guys answer it. That's really what it is. So the first thing I wanted to do, this is happening right now. One of our best clients, our biggest client, five digits per month MRR. And what's happening is it's a law firm. They have a legal administrator. Legal administrator's name is Jen. And we have a really good relationship with Jen. Jen's awesome to work with, etc. What had happened, just to set the stage a little bit, is they had a legal administrator. His name was Ray, and Ray took had a very, 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 very serious fall and hospitalizations and all sorts of things, and basically he ended up quitting, or not quitting, but having to leave because of his health. And so his assistant Jen took his role. So prior to Ray was our point of contact, then Jen became our point of contact, and she was the legal administrator. It was recently, I'm talking within the past, say, 6 months or so, that they hired a person who was hired on as a CFO, not a legal administrator, just a CFO. Mm-hmm. And what's happening right now is that the CFO is not staying in his, and his name is George, he's not staying in his lane. He is taking over some of Jen's tasks without her requesting help or without management from the firm approving that. He's basically just not staying in his lane. But beyond not staying in his lane, he's making waves with us. So he's pointing out some things that are going on that aren't necessarily our fault, but he's sort of throwing us under the bus. So he's basically making waves and making problems for us. In addition, Jen is in the same boat. He's making problems for her because he's taking over some of her responsibilities without her asking him to do so. And he's basically sticking his nose where it doesn't belong. His nose is in finance, should be in the finances, and he is making it his problem or his duty to be the all-encompassing legal administrator, even though there is a very perfectly valid legal administrator right there that's already got a job. So we are trying to work our way through this problem, actually, that we are right in the middle of it right now. Whenever our techs go on site, he will pull the techs aside and start talking about these grand schemes of grand plans or grand ideas that he has that are sort of like IT strategy and stuff with our techs. And that's, so we want to put a stop to George's antics, and we're trying to come up with a way to do that in a professional manner. Anyone have any thoughts for us?
If that was my client, Rich, I would be getting in contact with the business owner and as well as the new CFO and your legal administrator, schedule a meeting with everybody in the room and just talk it out, right? I mean, I would take some documentation about kind of the things that he's done that he hasn't been in his own lane in. Maybe, your legal administrator now can provide some examples as well. But just go into that meeting being prepared to discuss some of the things that are causing some challenges, and also be prepared to talk about why you guys are there and why you're adding value within that conversation, and just making sure that everyone's on the same page, right? So if that meeting hasn't happened, that's what I would do. Get the business owner involved, get the legal administrator as well as the new CFO to all just have a conversation and duke it out, right? I think sometimes that's the best way to do it, but also having the right people in the room, because if you don't, right, I mean, no one's going to be listening. So that would be my
I like, you know what, the word that stuck out the most in your comment there that I like the most is how do we provide value to this client? And the word value is specifically what I was what caught my attention. Anyone else have anything to say? Because one of the things that I want to stress here is that it's not just a TechSolutions problem. This is also a Jen problem. So she's feeling like she's being that he needs to stay in his lane as well. So I don't want to, politically speaking, I don't want to sort of stick my nose where it doesn't belong. So anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, Rich, I would stay entirely into the tech world about providing value. As much as Jen's been your advocate and has been essential for maintaining the business, you kind of hit on it there, and that is you go get into the political side, and now your exposure is greatly increased. I personally, having been doing this for a few years, I wouldn't get near that. I've got an issue, a similar but not the same kind of issue going on with a new customer right now, in that they don't believe that I'm trying to send them quotes over at cost or a little bit above cost. They want to go shop everything, and they save 16 cents on a $17,000 order, and then they wonder why Insight's not going to ship it for 4.5 weeks, and they're wondering why they can't have machines in front of their customers on Monday, when I told them, well, this quote's for what's sitting on a shelf somewhere, and I can have it shipped to you tomorrow. And because of that, there's no single decision maker inside the organization, which is the biggest problem. You've got 4 different individuals plus 2 in the executive team who are all doing this against each other. I started to get into the middle of it, and quickly realized that the best place for me to be was 3 feet away from it and just sit with popcorn and watch. Very honestly, go back to expressing your value, demonstrate that. I'd run it like a QBR, quite honestly. I would entirely run it as a QBR. Have you done a QBR since this new CFO came on board?
Yeah, several, a couple, two, I think.
Yeah, I would stick to the what he's calling the facts that he's throwing you under the bus on, and any feedback that you've gotten on from your techs about his grand visions, say, hey, we've such and such mentioned this to us. We've looked into this. Have you considered this and this and this? Bring up aspects that he may or may not have considered.
Okay. Does anybody else want to, offer an opinion? Rich? It looks like you do.
I was gonna ask, when he first came on board, were you guys aware that he was coming on board, and when this change was coming on board, and they would be there, new hire, 3 months, 2 months, whatever?
The answer to that question is when he came on board, we were told the same thing Jen was told, which is he's going to be, in charge of finances. His job is the bottom line for this law firm, but he's not in charge of any IT decision makings or anything like that. The same thing Jen was told, and he's just butting his nose into the IT decision making process.
So if he's not even involved, I would just there's 2 things. There's one diplomatic way where I would sit down and have if he's not involved in any IT solutions at all, period, I would exclude him from everything moving forward. Number 2, if that's not the case, then I would try to sit down and have a VIP onboarding with him to establish what we do and who we are and why we're here. And if there's a different vision that he has, then we need to have that with the person who hired us and, get on the same page somehow. Otherwise, this is how we're going to do it. And, we'll talk to whoever's over him. If he needs to be included, we'll have that conversation with the person who's over him, whoever the owner is, or that person might be.
We do VIP onboarding for all new point of contacts and for people in that position. It pretty much explains what we are, what we expect from them, what they should expect from us. And we try to do that as soon as they're hired, so maybe the clash doesn't happen, maybe.
Okay, so Kelly, can you explain a little bit more about what defining a VIP onboarding?
Yeah, I haven't done one in a while. So, and actually we at AtNet, we have people that's kind of their role to do that with clients. We have Emily that does that with them. It's catered basically, it's not, when you call AtNet, here's your support. It's catered more towards them on like their business. I haven't done one in a while, Rich. Have you? It's
Yeah, it's really
basically
kind of,
it's catered more towards, it makes them feel important, but it also it lets them know, like our techs, it lets them know what they're there to do, what our engineers do. So maybe the guy wouldn't grab your tech when he came in if he knew that so and so, that's not their job. It brings us face to face with them to let them know this is what you come to me for. This is what you go to so and so for, just to make them feel important that they have certain people in the organization that are catered towards them and for certain reasons, maybe. But what am I missing, Rich?
it's really like a condensed version of an onboarding when you bring on a new client, new customer, period. So it's like their
Yeah.
introduction to our company. This is what we hear. This is what we do. This is how you get a hold of us. This is when you need to call us. And then this is kind of establishing the partnership, what it is, what it
Yeah,
means,
we
what
have
you
an
do.
organization chart where we show everybody
Yeah,
the
I was going
roles, that kind of thing.
an entire chart that has a picture of everybody from technical.
Yeah, we have,
who
and
they're-
all their duties, everything like that. So
Yeah.
it kind of makes them feel important to where this is just for you. This is where you go. We can't help the internal. I had a customer that was exactly like yours, and we fired them. I'm not trying to be rude, but we fired them. It wasn't working. They weren't working with our values. They were causing so much turmoil within our company and with our techs and with everybody that they weren't a good fit. I don't want you to think we fire people. I mean, it happened once in 20 years, but I had a customer just like you guys, that everybody and their brother was getting involved. They were hiring people and not telling us, and then getting upset that they didn't have stuff for them and all that kind of stuff. And my point of contact was always like happy and go lucky, but everybody else in the company was mad at us. We got rid of them because their values didn't work for us. And
That align.
we had plenty of conversations like you're talking about, this is what we do. This is what we need from you. It was more, we need this from you to make our partnership better. You're not our customer, you're our partner. We're not working as partners when you're doing this with us. And it didn't work. We had to get rid of them.
Okay, great. Did you have anything else, Rich?
No, I mean, I think the key thing is if they were told to you that this person's not part of IT, then there's something needs to be reestablished there.
Rich, I've got a quick question. Is this guy, is the CFO, is he a decision maker there, or is he a major influencer?
He would be I don't know, what would you say, Al? He would be a decision maker, I guess, or he'd probably be an influencer, actually. Yeah, he's an influencer.
Okay, because just like everyone here, I knew that we had a client similar situation. What was helpful for us to kind of, it sounds like there's a lot of confusion, a lot of gray areas on who's like staying in people's lanes, right? Who's responsible for what? And one of the methods we used, not exact situation, but it was helpful, is putting together like a RACI matrix, where you put lines of responsibilities and you designate who's responsible for what. You can even make that political. This was more technical, but I could see that maybe be helping paint the picture of where responsibilities lie between your organization and them.
Great. So if we can assist them, if we phrase it in such a way where we are trying to get our facts straight on who we go to for whatever issue we're having. So if we're having an issue with accounts receivable, we go to George. But if we're having an issue where we need some clarification on an IT matter, we go to Jen. And we're asking the questions, and we're saying, okay, here's a matrix of things. Can you fill out this matrix to help us decide who to go to and who to talk to in any given situation? That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is this next one is really close to the first one. So we don't have to spend long on it, but this is another thing that just happened to us. So there's a 40-person engineering firm, and the president of the firm, it's an ESOP, which is an employee-owned company. What's an employee stock-owned, whatever plan. Anyway, it's an employee-owned company. The board of directors let the president go. So the president has been, you know, we've been working for these guys for years and years and years. The president has always been the decision maker. There's influencers along the way, but the president has always been the decision maker. They let him go because of various reasons. I think it was tied to poor financial decision making. But at any rate, he is going to be replaced with, right now he's replaced with an interim president who is an existing employee and already has some knowledge of what we do and who we are. But by December or January, they hope to have a full-time, you know, they're gonna put it out there and look for a new president to take on that role. So we don't have to go into huge details here because we just talked about this kind of similar thing. But I just wanted to put out the theory for 2 points that I want clarification on from you guys. A, do we do anything special with the existing employee who is now the president, you know, the interim president? And B, how do we handle the brand new president? Because in our experience, a change of regime is, it could go one of 2 ways. And one of those ways is you lose the client because he wants, you know, they have a different direction. So the first one is, what do we do with the interim president? Anything special?
I say you work with them the same way you did the president, and just kind of do everything you can to make his life easier and just continue on as business as usual with him and keep him in communication with everything, in my opinion. And then when the new president comes on board, hopefully he's in your back pocket to, you know, be an advocate for you and have like that VIP onboarding with them to establish this is who we are, this is what we do, this is why we're doing what we're doing, things of that nature, if that's possible.
I think you should also.
I love your answer, and that was really what my plan was, is to, you know, do our best to make the interim president as well as our main point of contact advocates for us, right? Mm-hmm. And so we start off with, you know, multiple people, call it 2 or 3 or whatever, like totally in our back pocket. Then the new president comes on board, and we have to completely VIP, to take Kelly and Rich's term, we have to VIP onboard them in a very, very special way. I've had so many experiences where a change of regime has caused, like there was one big major nonprofit we were working for, and the executive director, they replaced the executive director, and they literally got rid of every single vendor, no matter if that vendor was good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. They got rid of every single vendor that the previous executive director had secured, and went shopping for all new vendors. And we were part of that mess. Like, what did we do wrong? We didn't do anything wrong. And it was just the new executive director came in and just clean slate. So I don't like change of regime. I hate it. I like it when everything's nice and comfortable and everybody knows each other and we get along well and all that kind of stuff. Before I move on, is there anything else? Did anybody want to add anything on?
Yeah, Rich, I think you should, when you're having conversations with them, I would get a list of his short-term and long-term goals. If you can show him that, you know, that you can provide him some value, or you can help him make him look good, I mean, that's always a good thing, because, you know, as soon as you do that, right, he's going to want to be an advocate for you when the new president joins. So definitely discuss a lot of his goals and like his future with the organization while you're having those conversations. That's what I would do.
Great. That's perfect. Thank you very much for that. Anyone else before we move on?
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually agree with him that trying to figure out what are his goals as interim president. Is this search going to be a while to where, you know, he's going to have his goals that he wants to carry out? Or is it going to be, we just want to keep things status quo until we get the new permanent president? And then when that new president is hired, I like to take, you know, decision makers at that level out to lunch, get them out of the office mind space, get them a little bit more in a casual setting, and kind of get to know them a little bit personally, as well as talk to them and ask them what their goals are, and then really structure what services you're going to provide around helping him achieve those goals. That way he knows that you're on his side, and that you guys can work together, that it's going to be a good relationship.
I love your answer. So the two things, first off, taking them out to lunch is a fantastic idea. And second off, both of you guys mentioned the word goals, and we need to investigate and find out what their goals are, and that's just perfect. Great answers. Great answers.
Rich, one last question for you. Is there a chance that this guy could become the president and still be involved in that search?
Not that I was told. So this all went down last week. And I was just told last Friday what the plan was with the interim president and all that kind of stuff. So this is all sort of brand new to us. I was told that he's an interim president and he is going to go back to his old job once they find a new president. So crazy. One time when we meet again over a beer or something, I can tell you more stories about this firm. There's so many details that I'm leaving out because it's just not appropriate for this call, but it's a great story. All right. Okay.
Can I ask you one question on that, Rich?
Yeah.
When was this person designated as being the interim CEO?
I think late last week, like Thursday.
Oh, so it is recent. Okay.
And we only knew that something was going down. They wouldn't tell us what was going down until it went down.
Yep.
And so we were kept. I won't say we were kept in the dark, but they were worried about legal ramifications, and also they had the lawyers involved, everything. So it was a pretty major deal, and it's still relatively new to us. So, okay. So if you don't know this about TechSolutions already, I'm telling you now, one of our primary verticals is law firms. So we have a lot of law firms, and so last week, the managing partner at one of our law firms was very upset, fit to be tied. There were 6 attorneys in total on a Zoom call with the court. The judge was on there, the opposing counsel, everybody was on there. It was like big old Zoom call with 20 people or something. And 6 of the attorneys at this one particular law firm, which is our client, were on this Zoom call, and they were all in the office, and they all got kicked off of the Zoom call at the same time for what we have diagnosed as a internet blip, which we have no control over, right? If Comcast had a blip or something along those lines, but they are literally at our throats saying we need a full explanation, and we need to know what you're going to do to prevent this from happening again. And they are angry because basically all 6 attorneys were made to look bad in front of the judge, in front of the opposing counsel, etc., because they got kicked off of the Zoom call, and then 30 seconds they were back on the Zoom call because it was just a blip. But okay, so now I'm talking to the managing partner. She's up. It's a her. So she's upset, and I have to have what am I doing? What am I saying? Where am I going with this?
Do they have redundant internet at all, Rich?
No,
That's an option.
there you go. That's good.
So they're working on it. We are working on it as we speak. They just signed a contract with another ISP. However, we're just waiting on answers from the new ISP.
All right, so that's in their near future, but it's not configured yet, is what the nutshell is.
Correct.
There.
Were you guys notified of the blip before they notified you?
No, it didn't show up on our monitoring. It was so fast that our monitoring didn't catch it.
So there was no like critical tickets put in or anything that.
Mm-mm. So we were completely blindsided with what just happened, and you need to explain yourself and all this stuff.
Sounds like law firms. I think you took a good approach. You explained the situation. You know, it was caused by the ISP having a blip. It didn't even register on your guys' monitoring because the blip was so short, right? You said less than 30 seconds. They were off and back on. So wouldn't have even registered as a ticket. I think if you just explain exactly that, maybe work with them. I'm not sure if, I don't want to all of a sudden like burden your knock team, but maybe adjusting those alerts so they'll alert quicker, possibly. But I think as long as you focus on next steps, getting redundant internet and ensuring from 2 different carriers, all that good bit, I think we have all that been down that road. I think is probably how I'd approach it. Just focusing on next steps. You know, try to stay away from why they went down and what happened, and focus on if you take this approach going forward, you're going to greatly minimize or completely eliminate that particular problem happening again.
So appeasing her anger is more along the lines of changing the topic, not changing the topic, but deflecting what happened and looking forward to the future.
Yeah, when I'm getting smashed, I really try to shift the conversation to let's focus on next steps, because that's going to be the outcome we're all looking for, and away from like, why did this happen? This was the pain, all that kind of stuff.
I'd even be transparent, Rich, and just be like, you know, there are some things that we cannot control, and that is one of them. And I don't care who you try to source to take care of this for you in the future, they won't be able to control that either. It's just one of those things that happens. And I think everyone needs a free pass in this situation.
Okay.
I mean, it's instantaneous, right? I mean, very instantaneous. It's like.
I agree with Rich, because I think that I think we have to be careful about how much responsibility we assume for things that we can't control. And setting expectations for clients that we can fix what we can fix and we can't fix what we can't fix. Because I think if we try the appeasement route if we go too far, what we're doing is we're setting us up for the client to be mad at us for more stuff that we can't control. So I think Rich is right. I think we need to be transparent with clients about what we can and cannot fix, and then of course how we can help them with redundancies and all this other stuff. But we've got to be real careful about the things we assume.
Yeah, and to take Jennifer's point one step further, I would go as far as to pull the contract from the carrier and look at the SLA. And if the customer wants to get up and angry and excited about that, look at them and go, this is the SLA in the contract. All we can do is ask the carrier to enforce the SLA.
That's actually a good approach. Like that, yeah.
Yeah, the internet's the internet. I mean, we can all, if you want to, you can have a 40-minute long conversation that talks about how there's originally 5 nodes on the internet. It's basically bubblegum and baling wire that made the whole dang thing work. I mean, the fact that today we can download videos and watch in real time, I mean, I'm not going to talk about the shuttle launch that I watched on the internet in 1989 at the University of Delaware, and it was grainy and glittery, and it was in 320 by 160 or whatever the resolution was, and we literally pulled the internet to the ground watching 27 of us.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything.
The whole thing is like, this isn't yours, this isn't ours. We shouldn't be responsible for it. It's a best effort service that you're getting from your carrier. And find that in the side of their contract and explain that to them. Because the internet, and I have not seen a contract yet that has an SLA that guarantees uptime on internet connectivity.
Yeah. So I think, I think every single person on this call realizes that we couldn't do anything about this problem. I think it's more of delicate situation because their pride or their pride was hurt or they were embarrassed because they were in front of all these other professionals that are either colleagues or what have you, and their IT basically screwed up, and they could easily throw us under the bus when they got back onto the Zoom call. I don't know the details about that, but I think the main point of this part of the conversation or this scenario is we've got somebody who's embarrassed, and we have to respond. We have to respond. We can easily go to the technicalities of it and say, we don't, this wasn't our fault and all these things, and we can go over why, trying to set the boundaries between what we can control, what we can't control. I think I was leaning more towards how do you talk to somebody who is that embarrassed without sounding like a technical jargon, person, and you sound more like a human being talking to another human being. And that's kind of where I was sort of leaning. But I think it's over now. I think it's gone. Like it was an issue from last week and it's gone now, I think. And so we can indeed just focus on what the future holds. But in the moment, there was a human aspect to what was happening as opposed to just a technical aspect to what was happening, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
Rich, that's where I just take it like a punch bag. Just take it. That's what I do. I just take it until they're done and let them get it out, and then you move on. Seriously.
Yeah, right.
I think a little empathy goes a long way too, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't tell you how many times I've told a customer, yeah, that I would be upset too. That stinks. Like that's not cool. And I think sometimes people just need to know that they're not alone in their suffering. I mean, we're talking about basic human need here, right? Like if we can't start in a place of empathy as CAMs, then we've got to fix that first.
Good point, Jennifer. That's great. Thank you very much.
So could you add one thing to the story, Rich? She asked you very specifically for 3 things, right? Root cause, right? What was the thing she asked you for?
Root cause. I think it was only 2 things: root cause and how can we prevent it in the future. Yeah.
I would just provide her those 2 answers.
That's reasonable.
I think that the nuance to some of this is she's an attorney, right? So I think you need to communicate with her in ways that she communicates with other people. Right? And second of all, I actually think everything she was asking for is pretty legitimate.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right? Like she can debate whose fault it was. Yeah, but when she says root cause, it doesn't necessarily mean that who does she blame, right? It's like, why did the problem happen, right? And the problem basically happened because they didn't have a redundant internet, right?
You could put it that way.
Yeah.
If you wanted to.
Right. I would just see it as, like somebody said it before, I would just describe it as, I don't know, the challenger is the right example of it's, unforeseen act of God, right? And that, is there anything Comcast could have done to prevent it? No, I think the answer is no. Right?
So to answer your question, Michael, in this particular instance, their Comcast line is coax, which comes with like 0 response. Comcast takes no responsibility whatsoever.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong. If they were to bump up to a proper internet pipe, like a Comcast business enterprise fiber connection that comes with 5 nines worth of reliability percentage, then that's different. So they could indeed go to a Comcast enterprise line, and then we could literally go after Comcast and say, why did this happen, instead of coming after us.
So my mind is you communicate back to her in precisely the terms she communicated to you, right? Here's a root cause, and here's how you can make sure it doesn't happen again, right? I think the only nuance here is you want to make sure you're communicating back to people kind of in their frame of reference as opposed to our frame of reference, right? So legitimately is, yeah, I can see why that's, you know, there's no law firm in the world that if they were working with Comcast could have not had that event, but if the solution's pretty straightforward and simple.
Yeah. Okay. Last one, and then my part will be done. So a client calls to speak with the account manager because the server migration project is taking way too long. They're very upset at how long it's taking. So there's two things at stake here. There's an internal response and an external response. The external response is back to the client, making them feel better, that we're going to take care of the problem, whatever. And the internal response is then talking to the service manager or the project manager or whoever it is and trying to get this thing going. But both, at least in the tech solutions world, both are equally as political. You know, you don't want to piss anybody off, basically, for lack of a better word. You don't want to piss anybody off internally. You don't want to piss the client off. So just thoughts, suggestions on what we could do, and you don't have to answer one at a time, but just think about it from an external perspective as well as an internal perspective. So I'll offer an opinion here. So from an external perspective, we're simply going to try to talk to the client and say we'll get back to them with you know, some milestone dates. You know, we'll get the project back on track. You know, and just sort of you know, talk to the client and try to just address the concern. And the concern is that the project is taking too long and it's taking way longer than expected. And we just need to address those concerns with setting, you know, I'm going to go talk to my service department or my project department, and I'm going to come back with some milestone dates, and I'm going to, you know, and then help be that intermediary, I guess, between the people doing the work and the client. And so that's kind of how we've handled it so far. But then internally, right? If you go, you know, I don't want to say accusing, but for lack of a better word, being accusatory towards the, you know, project department, saying why, you know, how did this project get so far off the rails? That could cause some tensions internally to the company, to our MSP. It's more of a question of, you know, how would you go about, who would you talk to within your own organization, which I get it, that your structure, your business structure is, you know, your org chart looks a little bit different than ours, but I would say for the most part, our org charts are similar, at least. So who would you talk to? Would you go straight to the owner of your MSP? Would you go to the project manager? Would you go to the tech who's supposed to be working on this project? Who would you talk to and why?
Hey, Rich, just so you know, and Rich can vouch for us too, before we start a project, we put expectations out with the project manager and with the client. We have a kickoff project meeting that gives all expectations of dates, when things will be done. As CAMs, we watch those projects closely. We have internal project meetings every week with every engineer and every CAM. We have a CAM project meeting. Rich, is it once a month or is it once? I think it's once every other week or once a month.
Once a month or so,
So
yeah.
we're pretty up to date on projects and when they're supposed to be done and stuff like that. So we don't usually have to accuse anybody of anything. But I would personally, we're told who the tech is, the customer is told who the tech is, the tech talks to the customer probably daily when they're doing projects. I don't know, we never get calls like that, I don't think, because we take projects like the most serious thing in the world, and we're on them constantly. If somebody did say something to me, it would be, hey, I tried to get a hold of Brandon and he hasn't called me back or something. Can you get a hold of him or something? But we would normally just go to the engineer directly. I would never go to my owner of my company and say this isn't going correctly. I mean, I don't think that's the way to go on a project unless they weren't doing anything, which has never happened. But that's how we take care of projects. So we don't normally, I've never had a customer, because a customer knows why it's taking too long. It's something on their end, it's something on our end. They've been told daily, weekly. I don't know if Rich can add anything, but that's how we take care of them. So it's a little bit different, I think.
Yeah, it's totally different. You guys have it.
That's how we take care of projects. So
Yeah.
it's,
So
we're pretty much in the know.
And
And
doesn't even apply to that Net Plus.
yeah, well, and like all communication, if there's something where like our engineer can't get a hold of our POC or whoever it is for that project, they copy us on all emails. So we have all that information. So if somebody did call me, I'd be like, it's because Joe didn't call us back, or something like that. Like we would pretty much have an answer quickly rather than having to go and cause a conflict in company. But just so you know, that's how we do our projects. I don't know if anybody gets that involved, but we're really involved.
Rich, that's something that actually Newman Network struggled with for a while. Like your exact problem that, as you described it, we struggled with that for probably over 2-3 years. And from the customer's perspective, the account man, they're always going to follow the path of least resistance, right? And that's typically the account manager for most clients, right? And so they would call us for service desk escalations. They would call us for project meeting updates. Anything would run through the CAMs. And the problem that we have where there was that contention is we'd be the source of the customers complaining or bringing up, and then we'd have to wait on different teams to respond back. And sometimes that gap could be half a week. It could be a very long time. So for Numa, things started getting better when we're fortunate that we have a project manager. And to kind of maybe set the context, we have about 1,000 hours of project labor right now. So the project team is ultra busy. And so I think for us, when we finally made the agreement with the project manager that any project request would just go straight to the PM. We would be in the communication channel, like we'd be there as like on the side if we need to be pulled in. But going forward, all of service desk escalations are handled by the service desk leads. All NOC escalations are handled by the NOC lead, and same thing for projects. And once we developed that process, things got a lot better. Our clients knew who to contact for issues, and internally there wasn't that rub between the different departments, because now they were just taking the calls from the clients directly, whereas before everything was funneling through the CAMs, and that's what caused that contention. Yeah,
that's fantastic. And you did put it, you hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned with the path of least resistance, always going through the account manager. And internally, when the account manager goes to, let other people know, then the account manager is always the person bearing bad news, basically, or
squeaky wheel,
right? And so you guys have handled that splendidly. Anybody else have anything to say?
Yeah, Rich, this is Chad. I'm driving, so I'm not on audio. But first of all, thanks for doing this. I'll preface what I was going to say by saying that we're not perfect. We make mistakes like everybody else. But something we implemented about 5-6 years ago was EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System, and we published an accountability chart. It's on the wall in all of our offices. It's online. But there's zero confusion about who's accountable. Somebody is accountable, or either directly accountable, or there's a manager that person is accountable to. So there's never a question about who to go to when a mistake does happen. The last thing I'll mention is that we have a formal process for whenever something doesn't go perfect, we have a formal process that's the IT quality concern or an ITQC ticket is generated. I try to take as much burden off my account managers as possible. I don't want them dealing with issues, negative issues. So they are responsible for essentially making note of the issue, creating a ticket, and it goes to an ITQC, and then our service manager is responsible for taking it from there and getting it to the appropriate person who is accountable for the issue. It could be a it could be a finance issue, or with like an accounting invoicing issue. It could be really kind of any issue. But once the issue is identified, it goes directly to the person within the organization, directly to the person that's accountable. So there's never a confusion about that. Happy to talk to you more about that offline too.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Michael, unless anybody else has anything to add, my part is complete, I believe.
Rich,
Yes,
I was going to add one thing, Michael. For
please
that,
do.
your instance and your actual situation, I would just say get the project manager, talk to the project manager real quick, and then have an update call with that client just to kind of hash it all out on a phone call, just to kind of establish where everything's coming from. For that situation directly. That's what my idea would be.
Yeah, I think what would be, I mean, first of all, do people think this is a useful exercise?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is something that's worth perpetuating. Two is what I'd like to do too is pull out best practices out of this conversation and actually kind of document them in a way. And I think the ones I pulled out, and I'll talk to Teresa about this, but you guys, I didn't realize you did that at Nest Plus. That's actually admirable. I mean, that's like big four quality control. And I think I'll talk to Chad to see if he's willing to share his kind of accountability matrix. But to be honest with you, what I want to do is to, after we have these, that there's some asset that comes out of it that's going to help you guys, right? So I'll take on responsibility for documenting those two things. And the third thing I think is I wouldn't mind having a best practice around VIP onboarding, right? I think we can write out some steps there. It makes complete sense. I think the thing I take away from this too is anytime a new person gets infused in a relationship, it causes disruption. Let's just put it that way, right? So all the things we can do to minimize that disruption. It's actually fun. It brings me back to, I used to do outsourcing on a very big level, like enterprise level. And we always had this thing that would be a chart on the wall of the project team, or anybody working with a client, was called conditions of satisfaction, right? It was for that specific person in their specific role, doing almost like an EOS exercise with Chad, is just having them articulate what is it they need to see happen for them to be happy and satisfied too, and making that very kind of clear and tangible. So cool. So I think this is something we might try to do on an every other month basis, if that makes sense in that kind of time frame. Again, rather than just kind of having a kind of kumbaya moment here, I want to make sure it kind of comes out with some kind of tangible assets out there. So I'll go through the effort to set up a Teams channel and start to document the best practices here. So anybody else have any comments, suggestions? If not, we can all get back to work. And let me just let's all thank Rich for doing this, because he's
it's all good.
You got the right energy for this stuff, Rich. You're one of the most intense people I've met. So it's good to have that. It's good to have that intensity kind of come through the call and provide some kind of kinetic energy to the whole thing. So I'll let everybody go and talk to you guys soon.
All right, thanks, Michael.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Rich.